Hello, everyone, and welcome to Justaposition, the podcast where you explore vulnerability, mental health, and authenticity. And I am so excited for today's guest because I have been wanting to have her on the podcast ever since I first started planning it out. Please welcome the one and only Step Chicken cult leader and fellow raver, Melissa Ong, or ChunkysDead, as you probably know her. Hello, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. You look so amazing. You look dapper. As I said prior to the recording, Hawaiian skincare daddy as fuck. I know that sounds literally so cringe, but that's actually how I feel in my heart and what I say to myself in my head whenever I see you on my feed. I'm like, that's him.
You know, honestly, you are the only woman I will allow to call me daddy. I appreciate that. Okay. I love it.
Oh my God, I love that we're on the same page here.
I know. I love your outfit. I love, she's wearing her merch, so please go. First of all, if you aren't already following her, like, what are you doing with your life? You need that joy, that chaotic energy in your life pronto, and you need some merch. I don't even have that beanie. I don't even wear beanies.
Okay, well, I'm just going to send you one in every color.
Oh my gosh, no, don't even worry about it.
He doesn't wear beanies,
but I will for you, baby. I will.
Okay, I love that.
Thank you so much for coming on. I am so excited to talk to you because I don't even remember when I started following you, but when I did, I was like, she is everything that I want to exude. Like the energy, the confidence, the chaotic energy. And then I figured out that you are a fellow raver. I figured out that you love going to raves, and raves are like my favorite things ever, and literally it is one of my dreams to go raving with you one day. I love you so much.
Dude, I love you so much. And also I actually really appreciate you inviting me to talk vulnerably and seriously on this podcast. I think a lot of good comedians, not like I'm such a good comedian, but I think that a lot of comedians out there who I really love and respect are also just very insightful people, because I think what makes a comedian good is being able to distill the kind of harsh, emotionally driven, abstract concepts of life into digestible pieces for other people. And so when I saw the question list, I was just like, oh wow, Hiram actually knows a lot about me, because you were referring to things I had talked about in videos that no one had ever watched of mine. I kind of went on this whole I'm gonna make serious mental health content on YouTube, and I went through a phase or whatever where I just basically spilled out my guts online, and 2,000 people saw it, and I was like, yeah, so transgressive. But yeah, but people I think in general, usually people quote unquote want from me are just my jokes, but as a person, I feel like my comedy is so deeply intertwined with all of my life philosophies also. Yes. So it's so hard for me to express comedy and only be that and not be able to express this serious side of me as well. So I really thank you for bringing me on to have this opportunity.
Of course, absolutely. That's literally one of the reasons I started the podcast and why I named it Justaposition, because I was there are so many incredible content creators and incredible public figures online that a lot of times we tend to view through such a narrow scope. You do comedy, I do skincare, and we don't get to get a deeper look at what happens behind the scenes. And what you were touching on with being a comedian, I completely agree with what you were saying, because in order to be a comedian you have to be able to view society through a different scope and a different lens, and like you said, distill everything that we kind of believe as a society and be able to kind of turn it on its head, but that a lot of times doesn't come without its consequences and its side effects, which can be really difficult. And you've kind of gone through that journey on your social media platforms, talking about mental health, talking about just being really transparent and authentic about what your personal experiences and mental health troubles and all the different challenges that you struggle, and you flip it on its head and you show it in such an entertaining and comedic and funny way. And that's one of the reasons I love your content so much. I mean, I talk about this all the time with people in my life. I think one of the best ways to, look at life, and especially look at the most challenging things that you go through, is through humor, making fun of yourself, making fun of the things that we oftentimes just take way too damn seriously.
Yeah, when something epically tragic happens or overly traumatic happens, like, how else are you supposed to process it? Like, I really like this quote that it's like pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional.
Oh,
which
I
is
love
basically
that.
like, yeah, shit happens, but then the way that you interpret it can make you either like suffer more through it. Like, if you're already feeling 10 out of 10 bad, the thoughts in your mind can make it like 100 out of 10 bad.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And so I do think like at least for me, true happiness has come from like getting not necessarily like control of my own thoughts, but yeah, in some ways control of my own thoughts, like being conscious of like all the things that are popping up in your head, and like how like I think people are so often confused by others' behavior because people lack an understanding of how deep and complex humans really are. Like, I made up this quote when I was high, and I thought I was like so smart. Like, me and my best friend, we were like smoking, and I was like, I just came in with this crazy quote, because we were just talking about how, like, when you are in a romantic relationship or any sort of relationship with somebody who doesn't necessarily match you intellectually, and like, yeah, I'm just gonna go ahead and say I don't think everybody's equally smart. Okay, I think most people are stupid. In a way that matters. I feel that way.
Honestly, having like previously
like a good opinion,
worked in the service industry, like I used to be this person that was maybe a little too altruistic for my own good, but then I started like working in service industry and customer service and stuff, and I'm just like, bro, we need help as a society. People, we need help. There's like
no, for sure. And like I feel like I met equally dumb people at Google and Berkeley. So I think everybody is dumb in their own. Like, I am personally only good at 3 things, which is like, you know, but personally, like, I'm good at my job and sex. And I kind of forget what the other thing is. Like, I have this like weird talent. I forgot. Oh yeah, I can do this like weird helicopter thing. It doesn't matter. So yeah. It's
oh my god, I want to see it. Can you do it right now?
Okay, I'll just do it really quick.
Okay, I want to see it.
Quick. Yeah, just real quick. Just real quick. Yeah, so my friend Brandon taught it to me.
Oh my gosh.
like,
I've seen people do that at raves, but I literally have no idea.
It's harder than it looks.
Yeah, the
it's,
coordination necessary is something beyond my skill set. So props to you.
Yeah,
Bravo.
no, I've been doing it at parties. I'm doing it at parties.
Oh my god, you're the popular one of the
parties.
parties.
Just to feel something.
Yes.
I wouldn't say popular, but definitely looks like I didn't get enough attention growing up, for sure.
Well, you touched on one thing that I'm so interested in asking you. So, like, you used to work at Google, right? And then you left that job. Was it in order to pursue social media? I find that so fascinating. Like
to make ass shaking jokes online.
Yeah, truly meaningful, substantial, world-changing content, as you have successfully done. Why did you leave? Like, what was that journey like? Like working at Google, and what made you like make that leap of faith? Because that is quite a jump, and for most people, it would absolutely terrify them. And a lot of people would just stay in a job like that just because that's the expectation.
Yeah, and I've met those people. I worked with those people who were, in year 50 of their life and had just been doing the corporate shit forever and are like totally miserable. But I think it was just like, basically the reason that I worked at Google and the reason I went to Brooklyn was I was just on this I think I was just one of those stereotypical millennials who believed in this whole like, you need to go to a good college and get a good job. And like, because I think that at least, I'm 29, or I just turned 29.
Hey, oh my god, yes.
Wait, are you a Gemini too?
No, I'm not, but I do get along
this.
with Geminis, and I think my moon is in Gemini, so there we go, connection.
Oh my god.
I know.
So your inner chaos is my outer chaos. Yeah, I'm like
exactly.
unironically into astrology now. When I first moved to LA, I was like, I'm not going to get into astrology, and now I've lived here for like, I don't know, a year or 2 years now, and I'm like, yeah, I'm like, life is just a slow process of becoming what you hate.
Yes.
So yeah,
and what you mock and make fun of.
I'm just like other girls. I'm just like other girls.
Exactly.
I'm just like other girls. Or like, but like, I think I just grew up feeling very scared and anxious of my financial stability in the future. Like, I think it's really interesting. So as I'm now like a little more welcome in the traditional entertainment world, I'm realizing that so many of the people in traditional entertainment, like, that it's not that they're not talented or hard workers, but that a lot of them just come from a lot of money or have generational, you know, wealth or whatever. But then I kind of grew up
as
like,
well. Yep, I feel that.
totally, yeah. Versus I feel like I grew up more of like an average American, and so, or I mean, you know, average Asian or whatever.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you mean.
And so I definitely just felt the like, yeah, like I just had such a single track mind because I was just like, yeah, I have to get into a good college. Like I just have to get into a good college because that'll, you know, help me get a good job. And then like I won't have to, you know, live poor like I did growing up because being poor sucks. And everybody in my life is telling me that being poor sucks and that you should
Yes.
and especially like with the state of the economy in like the way that we grew up where the job market was so like fucked up and student loans
For
were like
real.
so fucked up or whatever. I just think that there's a whole generation of like a type of millennial like me who has been, you know, infected by that fear and like operates their life that way. And then, so basically like, you know, in my heart, like I'd always been artistic, but I just feel like, and like as a child, like I wanted to pursue art, but then, you know, everybody in your life tells you that you like shouldn't do art because you're just going to end up poor. You should be a doctor or a lawyer, an engineer or something that, and you know, so everyone was like preaching this like if you go to like Harvard or Stanford and then you get a job at fucking like Google or McKinsey, you'll be, you know, happy and you'll be it's like the best type of lame success in my opinion.
Yep.
And I totally subscribed to that, and I was just lying to myself about how unhappy I was the entire journey, and I just feel like how it happened was every year I just hated it more and more. So while I was at Berkeley, I was just like, I kind of had a chip on I was just like, yeah, like, you know, I'll do the Berkeley thing, then I'll get a job at Google or whatever.
Just the cycle.
And then, you know, I feel like I worked really hard to like get the job at Google, and I thought that would make me happy. But every year of working in tech, prior to, because I started working for Google in like 2019, I think.
Oh wow! Okay,
and I graduated in 2015. Yeah,
Nice.
and so prior to that, I worked at like a bunch of random tech places. So like. Yahoo and HuffPost and whatever. Bad memories.
No big deal. Yeah, memory trauma.
Yeah, like Adobe, Cisco, and so I'm scared talking about it. But anyway, so but I think that like by the time I got to Google, like this is like year 8 of me like really deeply lying to myself, because at Berkeley, like I studied like cognitive science and kind of like a mix of computer science and neuroscience focused within the major. Hated both of them, totally hated both of them, but just kind of was like doing it because I thought, like literally my thought process was, okay, out of the 3 jobs that are going to give me financial stability that I could withstand, there's the doctor shit. That sounds terrible. Can't do that. It's going to take too long. There's the business stuff. My brain doesn't work that way. Still doesn't work that way. Not good at it. So I guess I'll do tech. And tech was booming in the Bay Area at the time. So it literally was just sort of like, what is the formula to achieving ultimate unhappiness within the system? Like,
yes. And then
like
you arrive at the
and-
point where you're, you know, in all those opportunities, seeing that success, you know, you get to that point and you realize like nothing's there really, or at least like I feel like I can relate to it on a lot of levels as well, because I grew up in an environment. I mean, I grew up on a cattle ranch in the middle of bumfuck Arizona, middle of nowhere, and similar to you, it was like everything I was told growing up was like, you need to, you know, find a job that makes you really good money. Do you want to end up like this, how we're living? You know, you got to make opportunities. And it was like literally the thing that drove so much of what I did. And I was like, I need to just focus all my time, energy, and attention on trying to get, you know, a good money-making job, because that's the most important thing. And in a way, I feel like having that instilled in you from such a young age completely strips away a person's individuality and, you know, creative things that they can contribute to the world, because you're literally conforming to what, you know, these companies or society or whatever, like count how many times we say society in this podcast. You're just conforming to what is kind of expected or what is upheld as the, you know, epitome. Did I say epitome? Epitome of success. And
dude, I haven't read a book in 10 years, bro. I don't give a fuck.
My pronunciation was whack.
I don't think I even know how to read anymore.
Yeah, same. Honestly, I think TikTok completely ruined that, you know.
Why would I want to look at words for fun?
Exactly.
Why would I want to look at paper and words? That's crazy, dude. Like,
I know.
there was this fucking... there was this meeting at Google or whatever, or it was like one of those icebreaker ones, and it was like, what's your favorite book you're reading right now? And I was like, ew, what a non-inclusive question. Like, way to assume, okay? Like, Jesus.
Like, my favorite book is TikTok
people would, like, talk about it
captions.
at lunch. Yeah, no, I'm just like, my favorite book is this meme page.
Yeah, exactly. It's like
but I think when you're like, I think you're totally right about stripping away your individuality by like imposing all this pressure, because you're like, just, I don't know, you're like molding a child, because like that's when we were hearing these things, right? When we were children, where you're like molding our brains into feeling like the top priority is not your happiness, but is like this other thing. And I mean, in some ways that makes sense, because I think, you know, if you're really in financial ruins, it can be really hard to be happy.
Of course,
like,
yeah. It like, affects your life in a lot of ways.
Money does, but it's funny, it's like, I feel like money buys happiness and also pays away unhappiness.
Yeah, you know, money really like buys opportunities for you to find joy. So the you know, happiness isn't in the money itself or necessarily even in the opportunities itself, but the freedom you have to really find what brings you happiness and doesn't just kind of chain you down. So in a lot of ways, I think
the only time money like bought me happiness for real was this one time. I just I like had $100 bill and I snorted a line of Molly off my friend's ass crack, and I was like, money does buy happiness, and there's like some clip of me online somewhere, but I'm like, that's another Asian, that's not me.
Money buys
like,
serotonin depletion.
Flour for fun. I was trying to look edgy. But like literally, so I think in 2020, when I was working at Google, I literally just got to a breaking point that had just been building over the course of the 8 years, because it was like 4 years at Berkeley, then 4 years of working in tech before working at Google, like working at all the fucking tech companies that are all the same anyway. And what's crazy is like, people are so surprised always about how unhappy I was at Google, unless they're like also from that space. Then they're like, oh yeah, this is fucking terrible. But but I think like, you know, people are so like ready to believe what like the majority of media is saying, and the majority of media, what the majority of media says about Google is like, it's the happiest place to work because it has all these perks and all these benefits. But like, and so it's like this weird thing where if you're unhappy there, people are like so like holier than thou. They're like, what do you mean? Like, you're so privileged. You know how many people would kill to work there? You know how many people would kill
it's literally Devil Wears
their
Prada
entire family and
quotes.
their dog and their cows to be in your position now. Like, people get so annoying about it, and it's like, bro, just like, but like ultimately, like, so I just couldn't even admit to myself that I was unhappy until I literally just had a mental breakdown, and I was like, I literally just had a mental breakdown like 3 months into working there. Wow. And then I was like, I need to quit, but after I get my bonus, because I was still a scared little bitch, so I stayed there for like a year to get my bonus, and then I left. I was like, I fucking quit 9 months after. Like,
I mean, hey, that's pretty smart. Whenever like people want to quit their jobs, I'm like, I think that's great if you're not happy, but make sure you have a plan in place. I just want to say I'm super proud of you for recognizing that so early on and being able to get out, because the amount of people who are trapped in just this cycle, this mental cycle of like, I should be grateful to be in this opportunity, I'm making money, I'm seeing success, all these things, but completely depressed and miserable in the process. And like, honestly, if you want to see a group of really depressed people, like talk about like tech people, finance bros, like that is just a miserable lifestyle in so many ways. And you know, the only
it's like a
happiness is what we
sadness.
Attach to it. Yeah.
But, and it's also unhealthy to like be in that environment for so long, because I think like, you know, all these corporate people, you go into office with all these other unhappy corporate people, and there's this thing where everybody is just like, you know, it's like there's an energy to it. You know how like Coachella, there's like an energy to it. I just think, I genuinely believe like there's an energy to places, not in like a wooey way, but in an actual like stimulation way. Like you go to Manhattan and you're just like, there's a lot of stimulation happening in these flavors, therefore it is this kind of energy. But but I think like, I felt like Google was very bleak. You know, it's like this thing that tricks you into like I almost think that like there are different types of unhappiness, right? Like I think what's like, I mean, obviously I would rather, you know, have free food in my dystopia than not free
Yes,
food.
of
But
course.
but at least in like regular corporate environments, you can be like, yeah, this fucking sucks, right? Yeah, this sucks. You know, there's no lying about it, versus I felt like in so many tech places, people are just like lying to each other and to themselves and gaslighting each other and gaslighting themselves into being like, shouldn't you be so happy in this environment? Think about how many other people don't get these kinds of perks in the office, but you're still doing something that you hate and being around a bunch of people who are doing something that they hate, because no one's like, you know, like no one's coming to work and being like, I'm so passionate about the way that Google Docs is reforming and making education more accessible for kids. Like, I don't think anyone really gives a shit about that.
I mean, it's so horrific for your mental health
for that.
to just be like repeating to yourself or being in an environment that has to remind you that you're happy and kind of like force feed you that. And it reminds me of this really powerful quote that I heard that like moved me. I think it was an Olympic gold medalist. I cannot remember who, but they won a gold medal, and they said like, why did no one tell me that once you get to the top, there's nothing there? Which I thought like impacted me so much, because I think that goes for like your job, so many other jobs and other positions, where it's like, if it doesn't bring you joy and happiness, no amount of, you know, like success, financial opportunity, connections, networking, yada, 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 will be able to, you know, provide that satisfaction and that meaning. And for you, you were able to like pursue, you know, a creative field, which I think is, personally to me, in my opinion, is so much more fulfilling in so many ways. And one of the things I love about your content that I think
that's
is
just
so
true.
cool.
I think that's just right. Like, I think that I read this thing recently that it talks about how like a lot of people who are just born rich and have all their needs taken care of just naturally go towards art. Like, I think in some ways a lot of human tendency is just to naturally go towards art. Like it's so interesting, right? Like, I think across the world there is some level of fascination with the entertainment industry, not to be like, so like, oh my god, it's like all about the internet. But I think, no, really though, like when you go across the world, like there is just a universal fascination with like what fame is like. Not that, you know, we're like super famous, but you know what I mean. I'm just talking about like as you see in the industry.
Yes.
I mean, actually you are.
No, not at all. Not at all. Are you kidding? I don't have a cult following my every step like you do.
I think you do, bro. I'm pretty sure you do. I'm pretty sure you do. I consider myself a part of the Hiram cult.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. I mean, yeah.
Oh my god, is this love in like the modern century? Being like, oh my god, like I would totally be a part of your cult.
Like,
I don't think
oh my god, I love your
mid.
cult. I absolutely love you, like true cult fan.
I just think everything about you is like literally so bussin' on God for real, no cap. Like literally.
No cap.
Literally, I just think everything about you is so fucking bussin'.
Yeah, this is the
like,
future that
this is
the future that liberals want. Just cults.
Yeah,
following
society
each other.
here was 3%
Society,
milk. Yeah,
bro.
Yeah,
I mean, you're right though.
really
Art inspires. Art, like, it moves us forward. It introduces so many like radical ideas and things like that we need to shift as a society. And speaking of that, actually, that's one thing I love about your content is I have never seen another creator, and I mean this, I've never seen another creator just be so authentic, real, and just honest about so many like human life experiences. Like you talk so openly about women's sexuality, which I love, like psychedelics, you know, a drug positivity. Like there's so many things that you talk about in your content that I'm just like, yes, I love watching this because it's taking away, you know, the shame that I think so many people feel like talking about that. Also, like speaking of women's sexuality, you have your clitoral hoodie, right? Like,
oh
I think.
My God.
Do you have it?
Right here.
Please show it. I just. I love the Naruto run.
You asked me twice. Oh my god. I'm literally just stripping. I'm just taking this off.
Oh, for free. Okay. Oh my gosh.
Oh my
I wish
god.
I had dollar bills to just like start throwing at you aggressively.
Dude, I know. I wish I had Monopoly money to throw at me. Okay, this is my clitoral hoodie.
I love it, and honestly, it's so cute.
Hoodie.
I love the design. Like that's one thing that you do so
Shout out to
openly.
my designer Hannah for making it. It's
so
literally
great.
so funny.
I love it. I mean,
yeah,
that's a prime example of like how open you are about just like talking about things like women's sexuality that people for some bullshit reason feel so much like shame about. I love your content for that reason. You just have absolutely no filter. It's so honestly inspiring to me.
Like, I can only do the bare minimum. Like, everything I do is, like, nothing I've ever forced myself to do. It's just because I was like manic and on when I just like felt like doing it. But when it comes to like, I literally can't force myself to do anything. That's why I haven't read a book in so long. Like I just literally like no amount of like, even if like God were to come down and be like, I will strike you and all of your friends and family if you don't read this book right now. Like, I'm just like, I am sorry, guys. We're all going to hell immediately because there's no fucking way I'm going to read a book like just because God comes down and threatens me and my entire fucking lineage, you know?
Yeah.
But I think
great.
like, because I think like it was so interesting. Like when I was a kid at a very early age, I think I just wasn't socialized properly. So like random fact, like I was in like I was misplaced in special ed in elementary school.
Really?
And I have this theory about how it like really stunted my social growth, but I think for the better or whatever, because I would like, you know, but I think, you know, as a kid I was always just like saying whatever came to my mind, and people were always saying like, oh, don't do that, like that's so weird. And I was like, why is it weird? Because it didn't make sense to me. So for example, like I remember when I was in grade school, one of the things that I think like got me put in special ed or whatever, I was so obsessed with like being naked. So I'd be at recess and I'd be like taking all my clothes off, and I would draw photo like pictures, like shitty crayon pictures of everybody naked. So I draw my teacher naked, my classmates naked, and I'd be like, yeah, on the neck. And then I would be on all fours and be like, no, I'm not even kidding. I would like run around on all fours and be like, doesn't matter, we're all animals. And like, but I was in kindergarten, and so like,
oh my God, I love it.
But I remember people being like, oh, my teacher being like, hey, Melissa, don't you think it's better to draw people with clothes on? And I was like, huh, why? I don't know how to draw clothes. Like,
no.
Yeah, nar. Like,
nar.
And I was like, I don't know. But it's so weird because like you grow up like that. And I think also like growing up as like, you know, like a female in society, and my parents had like pretty conservative beliefs about like what women should be and how you know Asians should be or whatever. So I think I just like, you know, wasn't really comfortable being myself until I started doing TikTok. Because I think like. Because I just never felt like I could be myself, and that brought me so much misery in like the Berkeley Google environment. Like I remember, okay, so how I got my first internship in tech was I wrote this like song my sophomore year after I took my very first computer science class or whatever, and it was called Teach Me to Debuggy, based on Teach Me How to Dougie.
Oh, okay.
And then I was like, this would be so funny if I like performed it at the tech career fair, and I did. So I got drunk
Really?
and I got a microphone and I performed Teach Me How to Debug. I mean, like I didn't like perform it. I literally like stole a microphone from someone and was like, hey guys,
just hijacked your way into the stage.
Yeah, but I was like so obnoxious, but I ended up getting a lot of attention, and that did get me my very first. Like, I think it was at like Adobe or Cisco or something. I can't remember.
Way.
And I was like, cool, that works. And I remember I was telling,
cool.
and I was so excited that I had like done this like stupid thing. And I told this guy that I went on a date with at Berkeley, and he was just he literally was so turned off. He was just like, oh my God, like that's so embarrassing. Like, you don't think that's so embarrassing?
Boo.
Like, who would do that?
Boo.
And
on
I was
a
just
date?
like, oh,
That's
but like
lame.
that story is like, but it's so like. That story, and not that I'm like really affected by it, other than the fact that I'm talking about it now, 8 years later. So not affected by it, just talking about it now publicly online, 8 years after it happened.
Just call this a therapy
with
session.
This guy,
It's fine.
I'm actually
it's
just,
fine.
Yeah, anyway. But I feel like, you know, like people who are I like naturally more creative like me, you kind of get bullied or pressured into thinking that you have to do that like other technical bullshit environment, and yeah, and it fucking sucks because so like now I'm in this like really weird position where I feel like the last 2 years of me putting myself out there online and making content, I'm like, oh my God, this is the first time in my life I'm actually being rewarded for my natural creativity and like the natural things that happen in my mind, as opposed to being punished. Like I had never felt like my, you know, weirdness or creativity was a good thing until I started doing content. All of a sudden everyone's like, you know, in entertainment, everyone's like, whoa, you're so great, you're so blah, and I'm just like, really? Because everyone my whole life has been telling me that I'm too intense, and that it's
that's
weird,
the thing.
and that
is
it's
like
bad.
the thing I hate about our culture is that like our culture demands conformity but only celebrates the outliers, which are people who have had to completely rebel against what is normal, what is acceptable, what is okay. And it's so ironic because like we celebrate the concept of success and like, oh, you need to be successful and like get to this point. But the people who have been the most successful, the most impactful, changed the world the most are the ones who went completely against the grain, completely against what was expected of them, and completely against what the path is that so many people expect. And it's this weird like clash because I'm like, how are we still, you know, in your situation, people telling you like, oh, you shouldn't do that, that's weird, that's strange, yet, you know, by embracing that and by showcasing that on TikTok, and now in so many facets of the entertainment industry, you know, you're celebrated for that, which I think is just a prime example of our just need to let go of just these stupid societal standards that expect us to like have to act in a certain way or have to go a specific career path or anything like that. I something I always think about when it came to, you know, creating content, and one thing I had to learn very early on is that if you want to be successful and grow in creating content, you have to be willing to embarrass yourself online, because it really is embarrassing. You have to be weird and you have to be different, because that's the only way you're going to stand out. Yeah, exactly.
You literally have to be cringe. Like I always say, I am cringe, but I am free. I wish I made that up. I just saw it on a meme of a cow. Like literally there was this meme of like a cow. And it was like, I'm cringe, but I'm free. And I was
need
like,
that printed out on a
I
t-shirt.
relate to you, cringe cow. But no, but I think that like, it's so interesting. Like I think especially now online, there's such a fear of being cringe.
So
like
stupid.
even more so than before. But I actually think that being afraid of being cringe is cringe, because it shows
definitely.
that you're scared and that you're just like everyone else. No, but
it's moral superiority.
I think it's way cooler.
Honestly, like if you're afraid of being cringe and judge people,
out of being, and it only comes out of a place of insecurity.
Exactly.
And like I think what's so interesting of like the way that people approach things, like I think so many people just some of their opinions are formed out of a bad place, so like out of a place of sadness or insecurity or hate or unresolved trauma or whatever, and then so their like opinion and take on life is, I think, you know, obviously naturally a reaction to that, but then I mean, I don't know, but I also think that it's really important to take responsibility for your child. Like I think that there are so many people out there who feel like their trauma is like unique or whatever. Like I think there's that line in BoJack Horseman where it's like the saddest thing was thinking that, you know, my trauma or whatever made me special. And I think and it's true. And then you get to a certain point and like what I don't really like about just the temperament of like online discourse now is there's so much validation of victim culture. And I think that like, you know, victim culture was born out of Good Place, like, because, you know, I think it was a reaction to like victim shaming. But now it's like, I think things always, like societal opinions just go so radically from one end to the other. They're just like constantly shifting and reacting in like the most extreme ways.
Always back and forth.
Yeah, totally. It's just like so now it's like this thing where it's like everybody is a victim always, and like everybody is accountable for everyone's. And I think that's like so unhealthy.
Because a lot of it comes out of projection too, like people projecting a lot of that, because it is, you know, like we do have our own individual traumas and we do have our own individual horrible experiences, and you know, it's important to talk about it and to open up about that and to share that in an effort to, you know, like help other people who may be going through that. But it's not okay to project the toxic traits that trauma or those bad experiences left with you and excuse it, which is kind of like what a lot of what I see online, where people are projecting that onto other people, you know, in a small way, giving other people trauma from their own trauma and kind of excusing it underneath the label of victim. And obviously it's a gray area, but I see that happen in such a toxic way so many times, where I'm like, yes, we've had, you know, you've had horrible experiences, we have had horrible experiences, but it is up to us to like resolve that and not drag other people into that negativity, which I feel like I've seen a lot online with victim culture. I don't know if you agree.
Oh yeah, and I think it's like the difference between fault and responsibility. Like, I think I first learned that concept from back when I was reading Mark Manson in 2016. No, he's great. Like, I think I was just going through a specific phase. I was like, you know, like really, I think I was really depressed my entire life up until recently.
Okay.
So So I'd always read like Mark Manson type shit. I love Unfuck Your Brain by Carl Lowenthal. I think those are the only two sort of like self-help things that I think are actually good, of the ones that I've come across that I think are like actually good and deep and like meant for smart people. And you know, just not like the abstract shit where it's like self-care is just kind of giving yourself a bath and business.
Yeah, where it's actually like, pointing you to like helpful mental directions. I feel like so much self-help is like too conceptual or too like you know, too bland or too general, when I'm just like, no, give me the points. I need to know exactly what to do. I need to know the help. And that's one of the things I like about Unfuck Your Brain, like what I saw in that book when I was reading it. One thing that I respect so much about your content as well, which is really difficult and kind of in the conversation of, you know, being willing to embarrass yourself and put yourself out there and be open to criticism and judgment and, you know, that moral superiority complex, is being so open about your mental health. Like, mental health is something that is very important to me because I have been through the ringer, like between depression, eating disorder, self-harm, you know, suicide, all those different things like I've had experience with. And a lot of people feel shame and embarrassment opening up about that. And the reality of opening up about that on the internet is that you are almost welcoming the criticism and the shame and all of that from a sea of people. But you've been so honest and upfront about it in a really not only funny way, but in a, you know, very vulnerable way, you know, talking about details that maybe other people wouldn't feel comfortable with. And I think that's so cool. But I also want to ask you, like, what your experience has been like with that. Has it been empowering? Has it been challenging? How has it affected your mental health?
I think in general, the only way that I can feel happy is if I'm genuinely being myself 100% of the time. And maybe that's just me, because I feel like not everybody necessarily gets happiness that way. But like, I think that for so long, like, I just wasn't able to be, or I wasn't like happy being myself fully, because I felt like I was getting so many environmental repercussions. And I think like, you know, at the time we were growing up, you know, like growing up, you know, like in the 90s as like an Asian American and a female, and having all the stereotypical like woman race, like whatever pressures put onto me. Like, I think I was just like taught that I needed to live my life caring so much about everybody else's opinion of me, because it was like subconsciously taught that like, oh, your self-worth is entirely dependent on everybody else's opinion of you. And so for things like, and so like, I think there's so many different ways in which that manifests. So there's like goodness of person, there's that category. So you have to like look like a good person by, you know, doing like, you know, I don't know, by like making moral decisions or whatever. And then you have to like be like not too much of a degenerate or whatever. But and then I just feel like over time I was just sort of like wouldn't it be amazing if I could experience life without fear? Because I think I used to live life the same way that most people do, where I make so many decisions just out of fear or because of what other people think, and not out of like desire and not giving a fuck about what anyone thinks. And so I think the more so I think, you know, after I quit Google and put myself out online, like the more I practice just not really giving a fuck about what anyone else thought, I was like, oh, I'm so much happier this way. And like and I think like when you like deep within yourself genuinely don't care about what other people think, because your self-worth isn't tied up in other people's opinions, and you like get to a place of like happiness and self-confidence, then like I don't feel uncomfortable talking about drugs or sexuality or like any of that shit, because I think that I consider myself like a highly intelligent person.
I would say you are too.
It ain't like the ways that I am. Like, I'm really bad at like most shit, but like in the ways that I am. And so I think that like if people think that me talking about my sexuality or experience with drugs or like any of that stuff that's typically considered taboo is bad, I literally think they're stupid. Because I'm just like, you're not seeing what I'm seeing. Like I also have like the basic marketing credentials of a I don't know, generically smart person, you know? And so
girl,
it's like
anything you know how to do,
come
it's how to
on, like,
market yourself. Like you do that so like, well. You know how to like really put it out there, and you kind of, I see how you're able to really take those taboo topics, which I think are stupid, because literally every single one of the things that you talk about are part of the normal human experience. Like, it's happening all around us. Just because people aren't comfortable talking about it online doesn't mean that the majority of people are not talking about that, doing that, participating in that, whatever it is.
Why are people in America so obsessed with seeming good? Or I mean, why are people just so obsessed with seeming good in general? I think it's also a cultural thing where it's like, you know, I think this is just, I don't like you know, America was sort of founded on very, you know, religious grounds.
Yes.
Not that other places weren't, but you know, there's so much more of a shame around sex and drugs here versus if you go to other countries, there's like much more shame around violence versus sex. They're much more open about sex and drugs, but then
really
there's like no
things.
violence.
Yeah,
and then also like, you know, we grow up in the American education system where they're like, America's the good free one out of all the other countries. It did all the good free shit. And and then you grow up and you're like, actually, that's
not true.
You actually, but like I think that like I genuinely think that most people deal with some sort of mental, like I think it's almost stupid if you don't, because I saw this thing that was like, maybe mental illness is just a natural reaction to the state of the world. It's like
yes,
it's like, have you
believe
considered
so
reality?
Much.
It's like, look at how fucked up, like it's almost like, how could you not be mentally ill, right? Like look at how fucked up individual humans are and history and the world and just how everything, like if you just consider the harsh reality of everything happening for a moment, it's just like, yeah, how could you not have mental illness? And I almost think so much mental illness is like this whole like, let's try to be a normal, happy society despite all this like fucking crazy shit happening and us and all these like crazy systems happening. It's sort of like, hello, are you like perceiving the nature of your reality?
It's turning a blind eye to the actual like problems in the world by trying to, you know, convince ourselves either as individuals or, you know, as a country or whatever it may be of, you know, a false reality of ignoring the actual problems that are happening. And in regards to mental health, like I completely believe that in so many ways, because it's like, look at what we consider to be like the values of our society as a whole, you know, like what are we upholding as, you know, the standard. And I think in so many ways that contributes to a lot of mental health issues, because if we're valuing things like money and purely success and jobs like what you had before and attention and, you know, fame and these things that truly at their core don't provide meaning, how can we expect it to like yield any positive mental health results? It doesn't. Like it contributes to it in so many ways. I think it's just a natural byproduct of what the world is that we live in, which is why I think it's so good to not only as individuals like separate ourselves from that mindset, but also to have people like you creating content that is just so open, that's so progressive, that is pushing conversations, even if it's in like a silly comedic way. I think actually meaningfully pushes forward conversations that we need to be having. And honestly, that's why I find so much inspiration.
And I think ultimately everyone just, oh, thank you so much. And I just think that, you know, the truth of it is like everybody sucks a little bit or a lot, and like a lot of like most people have, you know, good and bad qualities. Like I don't think there's this like good person, bad person thing. Like I don't think that like, you know, me doing morally questionable things sometimes all the time, well, but not like actually morally questionable, right? Like there are things that people associate with morals, like I don't know, recycling. Like, yeah, bro, I don't always throw the plastic thing in the plastic hoops. Sometimes I'm fucking lazy and I just do it in the other. Like, I don't think I'm a worthless human being because of that.
Yeah. No, it's all a gray area. We have to recognize the, you know, the
liminal
mix
space
of everything. Yeah, like that. It's a blend. It's about, you know, committing to being better. It's about, you know, working hard individually to become better. Not this expectation of like you are either a good person or you are a shitty person, and there is no in between, and we have to associate you with either one or the other. It's a blend, and I think the more that people realize that just everything is a gray area and everything's really complicated and nothing is black and white, and we have to like, you know, once we recognize that, I feel like it'll help the world change in such a better way. And I think you are a perfect example of that. Sorry, I know like this whole episode it seemed like I'm like fangirling over you, and that is because that is true. Because I just think like your content and everything is so cool.
Amazing.
Thank you.
I love talking to you. I'm the biggest fan of you. Oh my god, like you, like seeing your face on my screen gives me this like weird, not weird, like weird good, like angelic Jesus-y feeling somehow. Like I don't know, like Like, it's like, I did this comedy special about how I put like Molly in my asshole and then it felt like Jesus was like coming. But like, I feel that in like a wholesome, non-sexual way with you, like in my heart. It's like I got like a little Dragon Ball Z like sensu bean in my heart, and it's like the you know, anime clitoris or whatever, and it shines a little bit. And I'm like, oh, hi, Ron.
Oh my God, I'm literally gonna type that out and print it out and put it on my wall because that
Oh my
so
God.
much.
Yeah,
Thank
send me
you.
a picture.
Yes, I will. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I really appreciate it, guys.
Oh
If
my
you
God,
don't
thank you
follow
for
her
having me.
already, you absolutely need to. Please go follow her, and please, can I get a commitment from you that we will go to a rave together soon? Because I'm not even joking.
Oh my
That is
God,
my
yeah.
dream. I want to rave.
Oh my God,
as hard
that's
as
my
possible with you.
dream. We are literally going to, oh my God, we are going to be a tornado of pleasure.
I know. We'll be a complete pain in the asshole to everyone around us, and I cannot wait.
Yeah, fuck them. Who cares?
Exactly. Well, thank you again for coming
don't worry,
on.
Harden,
I
'cause
appreciate you.
Just blame it all on me.
Yeah.
I'll be the bad cop.
I'll just be like,
blame-
oh, she's the
sorry,
issue.
she's really fucked up. I'm like her friend.
Like I'm just taking care of her, making sure that she's okay, participating
Yeah,
in
it's
the
my
same
duty.
activities. I cannot wait for that day. I love you so
for
much.
having me. I cannot wait for this episode to come out.
Of course, yeah. And thank you to everyone who has watched. If you haven't already, please make sure you subscribe to Justaposition. This has been a production of Ramble, a Cadence 13 studio. New episodes every Thursday. Thank you guys.
Thank you. Bye.